Marcus Wellington adjusted his platinum Rolex as his private jet descended toward Atlanta. The city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds, but tonight they held no beauty for him. Another board meeting, another acquisition, another day in the endless cycle of building his empire. At 32, he controlled a fortune worth $8 billion, yet felt emptier than the champagne flute in his hand. But nothing could have prepared him for what awaited him in his own mansion, a secret that would shatter everything he thought he knew about love, betrayal, and the price of power. If this story hooks you as much as it did me, smash that subscribe button. We're racing toward 10K subscribers, and every single one of you makes this journey possible. Let's dive into Marcus's world together. The Wellington estate sprawled across 50 acres of pristine Georgia countryside, its neoclassical columns gleaming under strategically placed floodlights. Marcus had purchased it 3 years ago, not for its beauty, but for its isolation. Here, behind electronic gates and armed security, he could escape the suffocating attention that came with his name appearing on Forbes' youngest billionaire list. His Bugatti Chiron purred to a stop in the circular driveway. The engine's whisper died, leaving only the distant sound of crickets and his own shallow breathing. Exhaustion weighed on his shoulders like a lead blanket. The Tokyo merger had taken 18 months to negotiate, and tonight he wanted nothing more than silence. "Welcome home, Mr. Wellington." The voice startled him from his thoughts. Standing in the marble foyer was a woman he'd never seen before. Tall, graceful, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that seemed to hold secrets he couldn't fathom. She wore the standard black and white uniform of his household staff, but something about her presence commanded attention in a way that made his breath catch. "Where's Mrs. Patterson?" he asked, referring to his usual head of staff. "Family emergency, sir. I'm Zara Johnson, the temporary replacement from the agency." Her voice carried a slight southern lilt that wrapped around his name like silk. "I've prepared your study and laid out fresh clothes in your bedroom." Marcus nodded curtly, his usual professional distance kicking in. He'd learned long ago that mixing business with pleasure was a dangerous game, one that had cost him dearly in the past. "Thank you. I won't need anything else tonight." But as he climbed the grand staircase, he found himself glancing back. Zara was already moving toward the kitchen, her movements fluid and purposeful. There was something different about her, something that made his carefully constructed walls feel suddenly fragile. The next morning brought rain, heavy drops that drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his home office. Marcus had been awake since 5, losing himself in quarterly reports and acquisition documents. It was his escape, his armor against thoughts that threatened to disturb his carefully ordered world. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. "Mr. Wellington?" "Your breakfast is ready." Zara entered carrying a silver tray, and Marcus felt that same inexplicable pull as the night before. In the morning light, he could see her more clearly. The determined set of her jaw, the intelligence sparkling in her dark eyes, the way she moved with quiet confidence despite her humble position. "Just coffee," he said without looking up. "Black. You should eat something." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Marcus finally raised his head, surprised by her boldness. Most of his staff treated him like a dangerous animal, respectful but terrified. "Excuse me?" Color rose in her cheeks, but she didn't back down. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just, you look tired. A proper meal might help." For a moment, their eyes met across the mahogany desk, and Marcus felt something shift inside him. A crack in the ice he'd wrapped around his heart. "You're very presumptuous for temporary help." "My grandmother always said that being right is more important than being polite." Zara's smile was small but genuine. "Though I suppose that's not the best philosophy for domestic work." Despite himself, Marcus almost smiled. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like a human being, instead of a walking bank account? "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. Something flickered across Zara's face, grief perhaps, or longing. "She raised me after my parents died. Taught me that dignity isn't about what job you do, but how well you do it." The rain continued its relentless percussion against the windows, creating an intimate cocoon around their unexpected conversation. Marcus found himself studying her face, noting the slight upturn of her lips, the way her hands remained steady despite the personal nature of their exchange. "How long have you been doing this work?" he asked, genuinely curious for the first time in months. Domestic service? About 5 years now. She hesitated, as if debating whether to continue. I'm working my way through nursing school. Night classes, weekend clinicals. It's slow going, but I'll get there. Something in her voice, determination mixed with exhaustion, resonated with memories Marcus had buried long ago. His own climb to success hadn't been handed to him on a silver platter, despite what the media portrayed. He'd fought for every dollar, every deal, every moment of recognition. That's admirable, he said quietly. Zara's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected such a response. Thank you, sir. I should let you get back to your work. But as she turned to leave, Marcus felt an almost physical pull to continue their conversation. Zara. She paused, her hand on the door handle. The breakfast looks excellent. Perhaps I will eat something after all. Her smile lit up her entire face, transforming her from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. I'm glad, Mr. Wellington. I made my grandmother's sweet potato pancakes. They're pretty special. Over the following weeks, these small moments began to multiply. Zara would bring his meals, and somehow they'd find themselves talking. About books, about dreams, about the strange isolation that came with their respective positions. She was working toward something better, while he was running from something he couldn't name. Marcus learned that she'd grown up in a small town outside Savannah, that she'd been valedictorian of her high school class, that she'd turned down a full scholarship to Emory University when her grandmother fell ill. She'd spent 2 years caring for the woman who raised her, watching her fade slowly from Alzheimer's until the end came with cruel mercy. I don't regret it, Zara told him one evening as she collected his dinner dishes. Those last 2 years, they were hard, but they were also precious. She didn't always remember my name, but she remembered the songs she used to sing to me. We'd sit on the porch and sing them together until she fell asleep. Marcus found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone, how his own grandmother had been the only person who truly understood his ambition, how she died clutching his hand while he promised to make something of himself, how sometimes his success felt like a monument to loneliness. Success without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness, Zara observed, her words cutting straight through his carefully constructed defenses. The night everything changed was unremarkable in its beginning. Marcus had returned from a particularly brutal day of negotiations, his jaw tight with frustration and his temples throbbing. He'd lost a deal he'd been pursuing for months, not because of money, but because the seller had chosen someone they trusted more. The word stung more than he cared to admit. Zara found him in his study at nearly midnight, still wearing his suit, staring out at the dark gardens with a glass of whiskey in his hand. Mr. Wellington? Her voice was soft, concerned. Is everything all right? He turned, and she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. This wasn't the controlled, commanding presence she'd grown accustomed to. This was a man who'd been stripped down to raw emotion, and something in her chest tightened at the sight. Do you ever wonder if you're fundamentally broken? The question slipped out before he could stop it, whiskey and fatigue loosening his tongue. If there's something inside you that's just wrong. Zara set down the tray she'd been carrying and moved closer. Why would you think that? Because everyone who gets close to me eventually leaves. His laugh was bitter, self-deprecating. My parents, my fiancé, even my business partners. They all discover something about me that they can't tolerate. Maybe they're the ones who are broken, Zara said quietly. They're the ones who are broken, Zara said quietly. Maybe they can't handle being around someone who feels things as deeply as you do. Marcus looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that he'd been searching for his entire adult life. Acceptance. Not of his money or his power, but of him. The broken, struggling, deeply human parts of him that he kept hidden from the world. You don't know me, he whispered. You don't know the things I've done. I know you blame yourself for your grandmother's death, even though she was 93 and lived a full life. I know you send anonymous donations to nursing homes because you can't bear the thought of other families going through what you did. I know you remember the names of every single person who works in this house, even the ones who only come once a week. Her words hit him like physical blows, each observation a window into parts of himself he thought he'd successfully hidden. How do you? Because I pay attention. Because underneath all that armor, You're just a man who's been hurt too many times and is afraid to trust again." The space between them seemed to shrink with each word. Marcus could smell her perfume, something light and floral that reminded him of Sunday mornings and simpler times. His hand lifted of its own accord, fingertips barely grazing her cheek. "This is a mistake," he breathed, even as he leaned closer. "Probably," she agreed, but she didn't move away. When their lips met, it was like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Every kiss Marcus had shared before had been calculated, performed, designed to achieve some goal. This was different. This was honest and desperate and beautiful in its imperfection. Zara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Marcus felt something inside him break open, not in destruction, but in release. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or board meetings or the weight of expectation that followed his name everywhere he went. They moved together toward his bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions with equal abandon. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise neither of them was ready to voice aloud. When Zara arched beneath him, her dark skin beautiful against his white sheets, Marcus felt like he was seeing color for the first time after years of living in grayscale. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, both trying to process what had just happened. Marcus traced lazy patterns on her shoulder, marveling at how right this felt, how perfectly she fit against him. "This complicates things," Zara murmured against his skin. "Everything worthwhile is complicated," Marcus replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, but morning brought harsh reality crashing back. Marcus woke to an empty bed and the sound of his phone buzzing insistently. 3 missed calls from his assistant, 2 from his lawyer, and a text that made his blood run cold. "Media has photos. Damage control meeting at 8 a.m. Don't talk to anyone." He found Zara in the kitchen, already dressed in her uniform, moving around with mechanical precision. She didn't look at him when he entered, and the distance in her posture made his chest ache. "Zara." "Mr. Wellington." Her voice was carefully neutral, professionally distant. "I've prepared your usual breakfast. Coffee, black, just as you like it." The formality felt like a slap. "Don't do this. Don't pretend last night didn't happen. Last night was a mistake." Her hands shook slightly as she set his cup on the counter. "I crossed a line that should never be crossed. It won't happen again. Look at me." When she finally met his eyes, he could see the pain she was trying so hard to hide. "You're not a mistake, Zara. What we shared was one night." Her voice cracked slightly on the words. "You're a billionaire, Mr. Wellington. I clean houses for a living. We exist in completely different worlds, and last night doesn't change that reality." Before Marcus could respond, his assistant burst through the kitchen doors, her face flushed with panic. "Marcus, thank God. We need to get you to the office immediately. Someone photographed you and—" "Who is this?" The way Jennifer looked at Zara, like she was an inconvenient obstacle rather than a human being, made Marcus's jaw clench with anger. "This is Zara Johnson, the temporary head of household staff. Zara, this is Jennifer Pierce, my executive assistant." Jennifer's smile was sharp and dismissive. "Ms. Johnson, I'm sure you understand the need for discretion regarding Mr. Wellington's private affairs. The agency will be informed that your services are no longer required." "What?" Marcus stepped forward, his voice dangerously low. "You don't have the authority to—" "It's fine." Zara's interruption was quiet but firm. "I understand completely. I'll have my things packed within the hour." She moved past them both with dignity and tact, but Marcus caught the shine of unshed tears in her eyes. The sight nearly brought him to his knees. The next few hours passed in a blur of crisis management and damage control. The photographs were grainy, taken with a long-range lens from somewhere beyond his property line, but they clearly showed Marcus and Zara in an intimate embrace on his balcony. The headlines were predictably sensational. "Billionaire's secret affair with the help. From boardroom to bedroom. Marcus Wellington's scandalous romance." "This is containable," Jennifer assured him as they sat in his downtown office, surrounded by lawyers and public relations specialists. "We issue a statement denying any romantic involvement. Explain that Ms. Johnson was simply a temporary employee who has already been terminated, and move forward with your scheduled appearances as if nothing happened." "No." The word came out harder than Marcus intended. "Marcus, be reasonable. Your reputation—" My reputation is built on the assumption that I'm some kind of machine who only cares about profit margins. Maybe it's time people knew there's more to me than that. His lawyer, a stern woman in her 60s who'd been handling Wellington family business for decades, leaned forward. With respect, Mr. Wellington, romantic scandals have a way of affecting business relationships. Your board of directors won't appreciate having their own reputations called into question by association. Marcus stared out the window at the city sprawling below him. Somewhere out there, Zara was probably packing her belongings, preparing to disappear from his life as quickly as she'd entered it. The thought made his chest feel hollow. What if I don't care about the board's opinion? He asked quietly. The room fell silent. Jennifer's face went pale. Marcus, you're not thinking clearly. This woman, she's using you. It's obvious. A struggling nursing student working as a maid suddenly seduces a billionaire. It's the oldest con in the book. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow, not because he believed it, but because he could hear the doubt creeping into his own mind. Was it possible? Had he been so starved for genuine connection that he'd fallen for an elaborate scheme? No. He remembered the way Zara had looked at him, not with calculation or greed, but with understanding and acceptance. He remembered how she'd shared her own pain about her grandmother, how she'd pushed him to eat when he was too lost in work to care for himself. Those moments had been real. He was sure of it. Schedule a press conference, he said suddenly. Marcus, schedule it. I want to address these rumors directly. But even as he made the decision, doubt gnawed at him. What if he was wrong? What if Jennifer's cynical interpretation was correct? The thought of being made a fool of in front of the entire world made his stomach turn. That evening, Marcus drove to the address his security team had tracked down for Zara, a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. He sat in his car for nearly an hour, staring up at her lit window, trying to find the courage to go upstairs. When he finally knocked on her door, the woman who answered looked nothing like the confident person who'd challenged him to eat breakfast. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. She wore an old college sweatshirt and jeans with holes in the knees, and Marcus thought she'd never looked more beautiful. Mr. Wellington, she started to close the door. You shouldn't be here. We need to talk. No, we don't. We said everything that needed saying this morning. But Marcus pushed gently past her into the small living room, and what he saw there made his breath catch. The apartment was tiny but immaculately clean, filled with nursing textbooks and medical journals. On the coffee table sat a laptop, displaying what looked like a job search website. But it was the framed photograph on the side table that stopped him cold, a picture of Zara, with an elderly woman who shared her warm smile and intelligent eyes. Your grandmother, he said softly. Zara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself defensively. Nana rose. She would have liked you, I think. She always said that money doesn't make someone good or bad. It just makes them more of what they already were. Zara, about this morning. Please don't. Her voice broke slightly. This is hard enough without you trying to make it into something it wasn't. We both know what this was. A moment of weakness, a mistake in judgment. You don't owe me anything. What if I want to owe you something? The words surprised them both. What if I want to owe you everything? Tears spilled over her cheeks then, and Marcus had to fight every instinct he possessed not to reach for her. You don't understand what you're saying. Your world. Marcus, I've seen the pictures. I've read the articles. You date supermodels and socialites. I'm a maid who's barely scraping together tuition money. This isn't some romantic movie where love conquers all. Maybe not, Marcus admitted, but maybe it's something better. Maybe it's real. For a moment he thought she might relent. Her eyes softened, and he could see the same longing he felt reflected in her expression. But then her phone rang and the spell was broken. I have to take this, she said, glancing at the screen. It's about a job interview tomorrow. Marcus left without another word, but not before he noticed the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter, the real reason she was working multiple jobs, the weight she carried that had nothing to do with him. The press conference was scheduled for the following afternoon. Marcus spent the morning pacing his office, running through different versions of what he wanted to say. He could deny everything, protect both their reputations, and go back to his carefully ordered life. Or he could tell the truth and face whatever consequences followed. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. "Hope you're okay." Those 6 words decided everything. The conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, and enough hostile energy to power a small city. Marcus stood behind the podium, looking out at faces eager for blood, and felt strangely calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I want to address the photographs that surfaced yesterday and the speculation surrounding my personal life." He paused, meeting the eyes of several reporters he recognized. "Yes, I have developed feelings for Zara Johnson. No, she did not seduce me or manipulate me in any way. She is a woman of extraordinary character, who has shown me more genuine kindness and respect than I've experienced in years of living in the public eye." The room erupted in shouted questions, but Marcus continued. "Ms. Johnson has done nothing wrong. She performed her job with professionalism and dignity, and any suggestion otherwise is not only false, but deeply insulting to a woman who deserves better than having her reputation torn apart for the entertainment of others." "Mr. Wellington," a reporter from the front row stood up. "Are you saying you're in a relationship with your former employee?" Marcus hesitated for just a moment. "I'm saying that I care deeply for someone who has brought light into my life when I desperately needed it. What happens next is between us, not between me and the media." The aftermath was swift and brutal. 2 board members called for emergency meetings. 3 major clients threatened to pull their accounts. The stock price dipped nearly 5% in after-hours trading. But Marcus found he couldn't bring himself to care about any of it. What he cared about was the radio silence from Zara. 3 weeks passed without contact. Marcus threw himself into work, approving deals and attending meetings with mechanical precision, while his mind remained fixed on a pair of dark eyes and a smile that had made him believe in possibilities he'd forgotten existed. Then Jennifer burst into his office on a Thursday afternoon, her face pale with something between shock and panic. "Marcus, you need to see this." She thrust a tablet into his hands, and Marcus found himself staring at a photograph that made his blood run cold. It was Zara, but not alone. She was holding hands with a small child, a boy who couldn't have been more than 3 years old, with Marcus's own dark hair and the same distinctive cleft in his chin that had marked Wellington men for generations. "Where did you get this?" "Private investigator. I thought. I wanted to make sure she wasn't going to cause more problems." Jennifer's voice was unusually subdued. "Marcus, the timeline, if this child is yours." But Marcus was already moving, grabbing his keys and jacket, his mind reeling with calculations and possibilities. The child looked to be around 3, maybe 4. The night he and Zara had shared had been nearly 4 months ago, not nearly enough time. Which meant this was a secret she'd been keeping long before she ever walked into his house. The drive to Zara's apartment felt like the longest journey of his life. Marcus's hands shook as he climbed the stairs, and when she opened the door, the look of resignation on her face told him everything he needed to know. "You saw the picture," she said quietly. "Is he mine?" Zara's laugh was hollow, broken. "No, Marcus. He's not yours." The relief that flooded through him was immediately replaced by confusion. "Then who? He's my nephew, my brother's son." She stepped aside, letting him into the apartment, and Marcus could see the little boy playing on the floor with toy cars, completely absorbed in his make-believe world. "My brother died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. Car bomb. Kenzie's mother. She couldn't handle being a single parent. She signed over custody and disappeared when he was barely 2. The pieces began falling into place. The exhaustion Zara carried, the medical bills on her counter, the reason she was working so many jobs while trying to go to school. She wasn't just supporting herself, she was raising a child. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter." Her voice was fierce, protective. "Whatever this was between us, it was never going to work. You have a billion-dollar empire to run. I have a 3-year-old who needs stability and security, and a mother who's present every single day. Those 2 things don't mix." Marcus looked at the child, Kenzie she'd called him, and felt something shift inside his chest. The boy had his father's serious expression, but Zara's warm eyes. He was beautiful and heartbreaking and perfect, in the way that children always were. "What if they could mix?" Marcus asked quietly. "Marcus, What if I told you that the last 3 weeks have been the emptiest of my entire life? What if I told you that I wake up every morning thinking about your laugh and go to sleep every night, wishing I could hear you singing those songs your grandmother taught you? Zara's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. What's not fair is pretending that what we have isn't real. Marcus moved closer, careful not to disturb Kenzie's play. What's not fair is you sacrificing any chance at happiness because you're afraid of what other people might think. It's not about what people think. It's about what's practical, what's smart. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I can't afford to make mistakes, Marcus. Every decision I make affects him. I can't just follow my heart when there's a child depending on me. Then don't follow your heart. Marcus reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. Follow mine. Before Zara could respond, Kenzie looked up from his toys and fixed Marcus with a curious stare. Mama Zara, who's that? This is... Zara hesitated, glancing between Marcus and the child who'd become her entire world. I'm Marcus, he said, crouching down to Kenzie's level. I'm a friend of your mama's. Kenzie considered this with the seriousness that only small children could muster. Do you like cars? I have 17 cars, but this one is my favorite because it goes really fast and it's blue like the sky when there's no clouds. Marcus found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in weeks. I do like cars. That's a very nice one. What's his name? Lightning, because he's super fast. Want to see him race? For the next hour, Marcus found himself on Zara's living room floor, being schooled in the complex rules of toy car racing by a 3-year-old with boundless enthusiasm and an extensive knowledge of automotive sound effects. Zara watched from the kitchen, her heart breaking and healing simultaneously as she witnessed the man she'd fallen in love with effortlessly connect with the child who meant everything to her. When Kenzie finally tired himself out and curled up for a nap on the couch, Marcus and Zara found themselves alone with the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. He's amazing, Marcus said softly, watching the child's peaceful face. He's everything to me. Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. When my brother died, I thought I might die too. The grief was so overwhelming, but then Kenzie's mother brought him to me, and suddenly I had this little person who needed me to be strong. He saved my life in ways he'll never understand. And you've been doing this alone for over a year. I had help at first. My grandmother was still herself enough to help with babysitting while I worked, but as her condition got worse, she trailed off, lost in memories too painful to voice. Marcus felt a surge of admiration so strong it nearly knocked him over. This woman had buried her brother, cared for her dying grandmother, taken custody of a toddler, and still managed to work multiple jobs while pursuing her education. She was the strongest person he'd ever met. Marry me, he said. The words hung in the air like a challenge to gravity itself. Zara stared at him as if he'd spoken in a foreign language. What? Marry me, not because of some scandal or because you need rescuing, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because when I hold you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Because Kenzie deserves a father who will love him unconditionally, and you deserve a partner who will support your dreams instead of asking you to sacrifice them. Marcus, you barely know us. I know that you put extra sugar in my coffee because you noticed I looked tired. I know that you sing old gospel songs when you think no one is listening. I know that you would walk through fire for that little boy sleeping on your couch. I know that you make me want to be a better man than I ever thought possible. Tears were streaming down Zara's face now, and Marcus could see the war raging in her expression, hope battling with fear, love wrestling with practicality. What about your business? Your reputation? The board of directors who are already questioning your judgment? Let them question it. Marcus reached for her hands again, intertwining their fingers. I spent so many years building an empire that I forgot to build a life. You and Kenzie, you're not complications to my success. You're the point of it. And if it doesn't work, if we try this and fail, Kenzie can't go through another loss, Marcus. I won't put him through that. Then we won't fail. His voice carried absolute conviction. I'm not asking you to trust in some fantasy of perfect love. I'm asking you to trust in us, in what we've already proven we can be together. But before Zara could answer, Her phone rang with a shrill urgency that shattered the intimate bubble they'd created. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. "It's the hospital," she whispered, her hands shaking as she answered. "Hello, yes, this is Zara Johnson." "What? When did this happen?" "I'll be right there." Marcus watched the color drain from her face as she hung up. "What's wrong?" "It's Kenzie's mother, Angela. She's in the ICU, overdose. They found my contact information as her emergency contact." Zara's voice was barely controlled, hysteria creeping at the edges. "She's been trying to get clean, but—" "Marcus, if she dies, if Child Services gets involved again." The implication hung heavy in the air. If Angela died, if there were questions about Kenzie's custody arrangements, if Zara's relationship with Marcus became public knowledge in the wrong way, "They could take him away from me," Zara finished, her worst fear finally voiced. "A single woman working multiple jobs, involved with a billionaire in a scandal. They could say I'm an unfit guardian." Marcus felt his world tilt on its axis. "That won't happen. I won't let it happen." "You can't promise that." Zara was already moving, grabbing her purse, gently shaking Kenzie awake. "I have to go to the hospital. I have to. I need to figure out what to do." "I'm coming with you." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Marcus, don't you see? This is exactly why we can't. Why this can't work. My life is complicated and messy and full of situations like this. I can't drag you into it, and I can't risk Kenzie's future on something as uncertain as whatever this is between us." Marcus felt like she'd struck him. "So that's it? You're just going to shut me out?" "I'm protecting all of us." Zara lifted a sleepy Kenzie into her arms, the little boy's confused face breaking Marcus's heart. "Mama Zara has to go somewhere important, baby. We'll be back soon." As she moved toward the door, Marcus made a desperate grab for her hand. "Zara, please. Don't do this. Don't shut me out when you need help the most." She turned to look at him one last time, and the pain in her eyes nearly brought him to his knees. "I need you to understand something, Marcus. I would rather spend the rest of my life missing you than spend it watching Kenzie get taken away, because I was selfish enough to believe in fairy tales." The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through Marcus's chest like a gunshot. The next 2 months were the darkest of Marcus's life. He threw himself into work with a fury that impressed even his most ambitious colleagues, closing deals with a ruthless efficiency that made the business world take notice. His net worth increased by another $1 billion. His empire expanded into 3 new countries. His reputation as a corporate predator reached legendary status. And none of it meant anything. He hired private investigators to keep tabs on Zara's situation, learning that Angela had survived, but was facing criminal charges. Child Services had indeed gotten involved, conducting home visits and interviews that put Zara's custody of Kenzie under scrutiny. She'd taken on extra shifts at 2 different agencies, working 16-hour days to prove her stability while attending court hearings and social worker meetings. Marcus watched from the shadows, his hands tied by Zara's explicit request that he stay away. His lawyers assured him there were ways he could help: anonymous donations, character witnesses, strings that could be pulled. But every time he moved to act, he remembered the look in Zara's eyes, the fierce protectiveness in her voice when she told him to stay away. The media had eventually moved on to other scandals, but the damage to Marcus's personal life felt permanent. He found himself standing in his empty mansion, surrounded by luxury that felt like a mausoleum, wondering if this was the price of loving someone who couldn't afford to love him back. His breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. Marcus was in his office mechanically reviewing acquisition reports when Jennifer knocked on his door. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her voice unusually subdued. "Says it's about Zara Johnson." Marcus's heart stopped. "Send them in." The woman who entered was elderly, with silver hair and kind eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. She walked with a cane but carried herself with dignity that commanded respect. "Mr. Wellington, I'm Dorothy Miller. I was Rose Johnson's neighbor and closest friend, Zara's grandmother." Marcus stood immediately, offering her a chair. "Mrs. Miller, how can I help you?" "Actually, I think I'm here to help you." She settled into the chair with a weary sigh. "Rose used to talk about you, you know, after Zara started working at your house. She said there was something different about the way Zara talked about you, a light in her eyes that hadn't been there since her brother died. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Zara is... She's an extraordinary woman. Yes, she is. She's also stubborn as a mule and twice as proud. Dorothy's smile was sad but knowing. That child has been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for so long, she's forgotten how to let anyone help her. She won't see me, won't take my calls. I've tried. I know what you've tried. Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I also know what you haven't tried. Marcus opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents, custody papers, financial records, medical reports, but what made his breath catch was the photograph clipped to the front. Zara and Kenzie at what looked like a custody hearing, both of them looking exhausted and scared. She's losing him, Dorothy said quietly. The social worker assigned to their case thinks Zara is too young, too unstable, too overwhelmed to properly care for a growing boy. They're recommending placement with a foster family who can provide appropriate stability and resources. Marcus felt rage and heartbreak war in his chest. When? The final hearing is next week. Zara doesn't know I'm here, and she'd probably never forgive me if she found out. But Rose made me promise to look out for that girl, and sometimes looking out for someone means doing what they need, not what they want. What are you asking me to do? Dorothy stood slowly, fixing him with a look that reminded him powerfully of Zara's grandmother in the photograph. I'm asking you to decide what matters more, respecting Zara's pride or saving her family. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his study with Dorothy's envelope spread across his desk, making phone calls and sending emails with a precision that would have made his business rivals nervous. By morning, he had assembled a team of the best family law attorneys in the state, each one bound by ironclad confidentiality agreements. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Marcus would use every resource at his disposal to ensure Kenzie stayed with Zara, not as her white knight swooping in to save the day, but as someone working behind the scenes to level a playing field that had been stacked against her from the beginning. His lawyers worked tirelessly, filing motions and presenting evidence of Zara's dedication and competence as a guardian. Marcus anonymously funded a comprehensive home study that highlighted the loving, stable environment she'd created for Kenzie. Character witnesses emerged, teachers who praised Kenzie's development, neighbors who testified to Zara's devotion, even Angela herself, who agreed to testify that she had voluntarily relinquished custody because she knew Zara would provide the love and stability she couldn't. But Marcus knew that legal maneuvering might not be enough. The system was designed to favor traditional family structures and financial stability, things Zara couldn't provide no matter how much love she poured into raising Kenzie. The night before the hearing, Marcus made a decision that terrified him. He drove to Zara's apartment, his heart hammering against his ribs as he climbed the familiar stairs. When she opened the door, the exhaustion on her face nearly broke his resolve. Marcus. She looked like she'd aged years in the 2 months since he'd seen her. You can't be here. I know about tomorrow. Her face went completely white. How could you possibly... Because I've been watching from the sidelines for 2 months, respecting your wishes while you've been fighting the hardest battle of your life alone. He stepped closer, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the way her clothes hung loose from weight she couldn't afford to lose. And I can't do it anymore. Marcus, please, if they see you here, if there's any suggestion that I'm involved with someone like you, someone like me. The words hit him like physical blows. You mean someone who loves you? Someone who would do anything to protect you and Kenzie? Someone who spent the last 2 months moving heaven and earth to make sure you don't lose him? Zara stared at him in shock. What are you talking about? The home study that suddenly appeared. The character witnesses who came forward. The legal team that's been filing motions on your behalf. Do you think that all happened by accident? Tears spilled down her cheeks. You had no right. I had every right. Marcus's composure finally cracked. You can push me away, you can pretend what we have doesn't matter, but I won't stand by and watch the system destroy your family because you're too proud to let me help. This isn't about pride. Zara's voice broke with emotion. This is about reality. You live in a world where problems get solved with money and influence. I live in a world where one wrong move, one judgment call, One moment of perceived instability can cost me everything that matters. Then let me live in your world." The words came from somewhere deep in Marcus's chest, a place he'd kept locked away for years. "Let me be part of your reality, instead of asking you to fit into mine." For a moment, the anger drained from Zara's face, replaced by something that looked like hope. But then Kenzie's voice called from the bedroom, "Mama Zara, I can't sleep," and the walls slammed back into place. "You should go," she whispered. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll face whatever happens. But I can't. I won't let you sacrifice everything you've built for something as uncertain as this." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to fight, wanted to make her understand that she and Kenzie weren't sacrifices. They were the point of everything he'd built. But the defeat in her posture, the way she held herself like someone bracing for the final blow, told him that words wouldn't be enough. The family court was a sterile, institutional building that seemed designed to drain hope from everyone who entered. Marcus sat in the back of the courtroom, having arrived early to avoid drawing attention. He watched Zara enter with her court-appointed attorney, noting how small she looked in her best professional outfit, how tightly she held Kenzie's hand. The proceedings were as brutal as Marcus had expected. The state's attorney painted a picture of an overwhelmed young woman in over her head, citing Zara's demanding work schedule, her ongoing education, and her recent involvement in a highly publicized scandal as evidence of instability. They presented statistics about single-parent households, questioned her ability to provide adequate supervision, and suggested that Kenzie would be better served in a traditional two-parent home. Zara's attorney fought back with character witnesses and evidence of Kenzie's thriving development under her care. Teachers testified about his academic progress and social adjustment. Dorothy Miller spoke eloquently about the love and dedication she'd witnessed. Even Angela, clean for the first time in years, tearfully testified that giving Kenzie to Zara was the best decision she'd ever made. But Marcus could see the judge's skepticism, could read the doubt in the social worker's face. Love wasn't enough in a system designed around measurable metrics and standardized assessments. The moment that changed everything came when the state's attorney called Kenzie to the witness stand. The little boy looked terrified, overwhelmed by the formal setting and strange faces staring at him. When asked about his living situation with Zara, his voice was so quiet the court reporter had to ask him to repeat himself. "She takes care of me," Kenzie whispered. "She makes me breakfast and reads me stories and sings the songs that make the scary dreams go away." "But wouldn't you like to have a daddy too?" the attorney pressed. "A family with both a mommy and a daddy who could give you more things?" Kenzie's eyes filled with tears, and Marcus felt something break inside his chest. "I don't want more things. I want Mama Zara. She's my family. She loves me even when I'm sad about my real mommy and daddy being gone." The courtroom fell silent, and Marcus saw his moment. Before anyone could stop him, before his rational mind could talk him out of it, he stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to request permission to speak." The judge looked startled. "Sir, this is a closed custody hearing. Unless you're a party to these proceedings, I'd like to petition the court to be considered as a party to these proceedings." Marcus's voice carried through the courtroom with absolute clarity. "I'm requesting permission to formally adopt Kenzie Johnson as my son and to marry Zara Johnson as my wife." The courtroom erupted. Zara's face went white with shock. The state's attorney objected furiously. The judge called for order, while Marcus walked steadily to the front of the room. "Your Honor," Marcus continued, his eyes locked on Zara's stunned face, "I understand this is highly irregular. But if the court's concern is about stability and resources, I'm prepared to offer both. I want to provide a home for this family, not because I think Zara Johnson is incapable, but because she's the strongest, most loving person I've ever met. And Kenzie deserves a father who recognizes how lucky he would be to be part of their family." The judge called a recess, and Marcus found himself in a conference room with Zara, her attorney, and a very confused-looking social worker. Zara hadn't said a word since his declaration, just stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Have you lost your mind?" she finally whispered. "Probably," Marcus admitted. "But I've spent 2 months trying to respect your wishes, trying to help from the shadows, trying to be what I thought you needed. And all I've accomplished is watching you fight the hardest battle of your life alone, while I sat in my empty house, missing you both so much I could barely breathe. Marcus, you can't just waltz into a courtroom and propose marriage as a legal strategy. It's not a legal strategy. Marcus moved closer, not caring about their audience. It's the truth. I love you, Zara. I love Kenzie. I want to wake up every morning in a house that's a home, because you're both in it. I want to teach him to drive and help him with his homework, and walk you down the aisle at your nursing school graduation. Tears were streaming down Zara's face. You don't understand what you're asking for. Being a parent, it's not just the good moments. It's sleepless nights when he's sick. It's tantrums in grocery stores. It's worrying every second of every day about whether you're doing enough. Being enough. I understand that being a family isn't perfect. Marcus reached for her hands, relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. Relief flooding through him when she didn't pull away. I understand that love isn't just the easy moments, but I also understand that I've been half alive for 2 months without you. I understand that watching Kenzie cry on that witness stand made me want to tear the world apart to protect him. I understand that you've already made me a better man than I ever thought I could be, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that. The social worker cleared her throat. Ms. Johnson, I have to ask, is this something you want? Because while Mr. Wellington's financial resources would certainly address the court's concerns about stability, marriage isn't something to be entered into lightly, especially when a child's welfare is involved. Zara looked at Marcus for a long moment, searching his face for something. Doubt, perhaps, or the calculation that had driven so many of his past relationships. Instead, she saw the same vulnerability he'd shown her that first night in his study, the same desperate honesty that had made her fall in love with him, despite every rational argument against it. I love you too, she whispered, so quietly that Marcus had to strain to hear her. I've loved you since you spent an hour on my living room floor learning about toy cars. I've loved you through 2 months of missing you so much. I thought I might die from it, but Marcus, if we really do this, there's no going back. Kenzie comes first, always. My education continues, and we build this relationship on truth, not on some fantasy of perfect love. Whatever you need, Marcus said, echoing the words he'd spoken months ago that felt like a lifetime. Whatever timeline works for you both. And your board of directors? Your business empire? The world that expects Marcus Wellington to be a certain kind of person. Marcus thought about the empty mansion, the meaningless acquisitions, the hollow victories that had defined his life before Zara. Let them expect whatever they want. The only expectations that matter are yours and Kenzie's. When court reconvened, the dynamic had shifted completely. Marcus's attorney, the same woman who'd been handling Wellington family business for decades, presented a detailed proposal for joint custody and marriage that addressed every concern the state had raised. Financial stability, educational resources, healthcare, emotional support. Every box on their checklist was not just checked, but exceeded. More importantly, when Kenzie was asked how he felt about Marcus potentially becoming his father, the little boy's face lit up with pure joy. He knows all about cars and he makes Mama Zara smile the real smile, not the sad one she thinks I don't see, Kenzie testified with the brutal honesty of childhood. And he promised to teach me how to drive when I'm bigger. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. Custody remained with Zara, with the court's blessing for Marcus to proceed with adoption proceedings following their marriage. The state's concerns about stability and resources had been thoroughly addressed, and it was clear to everyone in the room that this wasn't a marriage of convenience, but a genuine family formation. As they left the courthouse, Marcus carrying a sleeping Kenzie, while Zara walked beside him in stunned silence, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. We're really going to do this, Zara said, not quite a question. We're really going to do this, Marcus confirmed, unless you've changed your mind in the last hour. She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Marcus Wellington, I've spent 2 months convincing myself that loving you was selfish and dangerous and impossible. But you know what's actually impossible? For imagining a future without you in it. Is that a yes? That's a yes to all of it. Marriage, family, building something real together. She reached up to touch his face, marveling at how right it felt. But I have conditions. Name them. Small wedding. Private ceremony. Just us and the people who matter. Done. I finish nursing school before we have any more children, Absolutely. And sometimes when I'm having a bad day or feeling overwhelmed, you don't try to fix everything with money or influence. Sometimes you just hold me and let me figure it out. Marcus shifted Kenzie's sleeping weight and wrapped his free arm around Zara, pulling her close. I can do that, but I have a condition too. What's that? No more facing the hard things alone. We're a team now, which means we figure out solutions together. Your problems are my problems, your victories are my victories, and your family is my family. Our family, Zara corrected softly. Our family, Marcus agreed, and kissed her right there on the courthouse steps, not caring who might be watching or what tomorrow's headlines might say. Marcus woke up in a house that had finally become a home. The sound that had pulled him from sleep wasn't his alarm or his phone, but the beautiful chaos of family life. Kenzie's laughter echoing from the kitchen, Zara's voice singing one of her grandmother's old gospel songs, the smell of coffee and pancakes drifting up the stairs. He found them in the kitchen, Kenzie perched on a stool at the island, while Zara flipped pancakes with one hand and highlighted passages in her medical textbook with the other. She wore scrubs, her clinical rotation started in an hour, and had managed to get flour in her hair. "Morning, Daddy?" Kenzie called out, the title still new enough to make Marcus's chest tight with emotion every time he heard it. "Morning, buddy. How are those pancakes coming along?" "Mama Zara let me crack the eggs and I only got a little bit of shell in them," Kenzie announced proudly. "A very little bit," Zara confirmed with a grin, leaning over to kiss Marcus good morning. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Marcus said honestly. The truth was, he still sometimes woke up expecting to find himself alone in his empty mansion, still couldn't quite believe this life was real. The wedding had been exactly what Zara wanted. Small, private, held in the garden of their home with only Dorothy Miller, a few close friends, and Kenzie as the ring bearer. Marcus had worn a simple black suit instead of a tuxedo. Zara had chosen a flowing white dress that made her look like sunshine personified. Kenzie had taken his job seriously, walking slowly down the aisle with their rings tied to a small pillow, his face set in concentration. But it was the vows that had made it real. Standing in front of the people who mattered most, promising to love and support each other through whatever came next. Marcus had felt something settle in his chest, a peace he'd been searching for his entire adult life. "Speaking of sleep," Zara said, interrupting his thoughts, "I got a call from the pediatric unit last night. They want me to consider applying for their nurse practitioner program when I graduate." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. "That's incredible, Zara. You'd be amazing at that. It would mean more school, more time away from home, and more opportunities to help children and families who need you." Marcus reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We'll make it work. Whatever you need. Even if it means rearranging your schedule around mine sometimes. Especially if it means that." Marcus had already begun delegating more responsibilities, restructuring his business practices around the reality that his family came first. Some board members had grumbled, but the company was thriving under his more balanced leadership style. "What about you, Kenzie?" Zara asked, turning to their son. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Kenzie considered this with the seriousness he brought to all major decisions. A race car driver who fixes people when they get hurt in crashes. "Her paramedic race car driver," Marcus said thoughtfully. "That's very practical. You'd always be right there when someone needed help." "Exactly." Kenzie beamed at being understood. As Marcus watched his wife and son plan out a career that combined high-speed racing with emergency medicine, he thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Successful, wealthy, and fundamentally alone. That man had measured his worth in stock prices and acquisition deals, had built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone truly know him. Now he measured his worth in goodnight kisses and homework help, and the way Zara's face lit up when he remembered to pick up her favorite coffee on his way home from the office. He'd learned that real success wasn't about what you accumulated, but what you built. Relationships, trust, love that grew stronger with each passing day. His phone buzzed with a reminder about a board meeting, but for once Marcus ignored it. This morning, sitting in his kitchen with pancake batter on his shirt, and his son's chatter filling the air while his wife studied for exams that would help her save other people's children, he had everything he needed. The empire would wait. The deals would be there later. But this moment, flower in Zara's hair, Kenzie's gap-toothed grin, the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged, this was the only acquisition that truly mattered. "I love you both," he said suddenly, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Zara looked up from her textbook, her smile soft and knowing. "We love you too, Marcus Wellington. To the moon and back and around all the stars," Kenzie added, repeating the bedtime phrase that had become their family's signature declaration of love. "To the moon and back and around all the stars," Marcus agreed, and meant it more than he'd ever meant anything in his life. Outside, Atlanta was waking up to another busy day of ambition and achievement and endless striving. But inside the Wellington house, three people who'd found each other against all odds were building something better than success. They were building a life worth living, one ordinary, extraordinary moment at a time. Did Marcus and Zara's journey from that one night to forever family touch your heart the way it touched mine? If you're feeling all the emotions right now, you're definitely not alone. Hit that subscribe button and join our family of story lovers. We're so close to 10K subscribers, and every single one of you makes this incredible journey possible. What did you think of their love story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.